Hey, welcome into the Husker247 Daily podcast. 10 minutes at 10 a.m. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Brian Christopherson. And look, we understand it's Houston Christian Week, and maybe you're a little tired of having to preface everything with, well, it was Akron or it's going to be Houston Christian. And we're going to talk about something else here, Brian. We're going to talk about the Big Ten. Big Ten conference play, I believe, starts this week. I don't think there's been a conference game so far, but I believe we're going to get a few this week. It looks like we've got Oregon and Northwestern, and that'll be a barn burner. And then USC Purdue as well. So
on CBS.
Yep, that's on CBS. I wouldn't look for either of these to be particularly close, but at least there's some Big Ten action in the air here.
Yeah, that's true. But Nebraska Michigan is going to be the first really fun CBS 2:30 game.
Yeah.
I think. But that it is good to see some Big Ten teams colliding, even if these collisions this week might be a little one-sided, I think.
Yeah, that Oregon Northwestern game. Did David Braun do anything to disrespect Dan Lanning or Oregon?
I don't think so. I think he played it pretty cool, but they're still 4 touchdown underdogs, and I think that's pretty fitting, actually.
Yeah, he didn't have any comments about Oregon, in which Dan Lanning could ask him about playing Western Illinois the week before. Nothing like that.
Haven't heard anything like that.
Okay, all right. Well, that's probably good for Northwestern, but playing Oregon, I don't think it's going to go so well for them. All right, so you rank these teams every week. I want to start at the very end of the list. What do you think has happened with UCLA? This is 2 years in a row where they just come out and sort of look terrible right at the beginning of the year. We know there's more talent out there than an 0-2 team with losses, and Utah's good like that. Utah just kicked their ass. Like there's no other really way to phrase that. But losing to UNLV should not be acceptable if you're UCLA. What are your thoughts on the Bruins here and their 0-2 start?
Yeah, I don't think they're actually the worst team in the Big Ten. They just are in this week's rankings because of the early sample size. But you're right. The Utah loss, I was like, okay, maybe the Utes are really good. They look fun on offense. I can kind of understand that. This last week when I was seeing that score scroll, it was just like, man, I expected more from them in year 2 because honestly, they exceeded my expectations last year. I know they ended up 5-7, but they had a brutal schedule, and they were kind of playing teams like they played LSU and some of these teams tough early last season. And then, of course, they beat Nebraska. They beat Iowa. And
nearly beat USC to get to bowl eligible.
Yeah.
That was a tight game.
So I was like, you know what? Deshaun Foster's got a little something working. And I know Eric Bieniemy's a known name, but they moved on and they went a different direction and got a guy who's coaching at Indiana who's now running the offense. I was like, that could be pretty interesting. Let's see what Nico does after all the hubbub about his situation this offseason. But so far, it's been brutal. They play New Mexico this week. You'd hope they win that one. But who knows? I mean, New Mexico kind of tested Michigan in the first game. So right now, they're 18th. Maybe they'll be a lot better by the time Nebraska rolls out to the Rose Bowl. But they've been one of the I think they have been the biggest disappointment in the league so far in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone else would really even qualify. I think the next closest biggest disappointment is Mark Gronowski's passing line for Iowa so far this season. And even then, you still have them 10th coming off the 3-point loss to Iowa State. So you're not writing off the Hawkeyes. There's a couple other teams playing interesting games this weekend. Wisconsin, they're 2-0. We don't know what to make of the Badgers at this point, but they get Alabama and Kalen DeBoer's bunch that have been under a microscope here since the loss to Florida State. And then Minnesota Cal at 9:30 at night. We know this is going to be the Michael Brunts lead-in for the Crawford-Canelo fight later that night. He's probably going to have to get a multi-TV setup so he can watch PJ Flex boys head off to take on Cal.
Yeah, both those games you mentioned are interesting. Let's start with Wisconsin, Alabama. I think you're of the same mind. You'll have to confirm that this could be a really rough year for the Badgers and Fickle. And we're entering the stage where maybe that starts to take place. But if they're going to push back and show that we're wrong, this would be like the sort of weekend where you start to see that. Of course, they get an Alabama team that's been beat up nationally for the last couple of weeks after their loss to Florida State. It's at Alabama. So I don't see it going well for the Badgers unless Alabama's maybe not that good, I guess. That's possible. And if that's the case and Wisconsin's a little better than we thought, maybe they go make that a game and as I say, tweak our thoughts on them. Minnesota, I don't know what to make of them. They're starting a young quarterback. They played a terrible team last week, so don't be fooled by the 66-0 score. Their first week, they kind of it was a sleepy win that wasn't real impressive. So this is the first game I think we start to see what they're sort of made of as they go out west to play Cal, who is also kind of a tricky team on the West Coast to dissect every year. You never know quite what they're going to be. That they've had a lot of transfers, so that'll be an interesting game though to kind of get a first read on a team Nebraska plays in a month.
Yeah, and Cal has the freshman quarterback that transferred from Oregon that has been lighting things up. As you know, Bruntz, our Cal correspondent, has been letting me know that the kid can play a little bit, as
That's
he
been
has
his
said.
take.
So
Okay,
yeah, that's his take. It's a very Bruntz take, but he's in on it. Anything surprising you so far in the Big Ten with these sort of teams and what you've watched when you have been able to?
I wouldn't say there's been a big surprise. You know who hasn't like just knocked my socks off, even though I don't want to go too far with it, is Penn State actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say they've had kind of a workman-like start to their season.
I actually watched the BTN 60 on their game against FIU, and they won 34-0, but it was like 20-0, like kind of late, and I did not feel great about them. And I, in these rankings, took some crap, and maybe it was fair because I didn't actually move Ohio State to number 1 after they beat Texas the first weeks. And my reasoning was I wasn't going to move Ohio State whether they won or lost, really. I sort of thought that was a game where they had nothing to lose in that because they weren't going to get knocked for it. And so I didn't want to give them go over the top with it either. But after this week, I moved Penn State down because I'm just like, well, if we're going to do this by what's actually been on the field, I can't say they've just blown me away through 2 games. And that's interesting to me, of course, since Nebraska plays out there. And I'm not saying Penn State's not really good or couldn't be one of the top teams in the country, but it does get back to that idea we've talked about on our podcast that what's so interesting about college football this year is even the teams that are like ranked top 5 to start the season, they've got some flaws or stuff that you're not quite sure about. And it makes it interesting. The door's open for somebody that's a middle or a program that's trying to rise like Nebraska to who knows, maybe the door cracks open and you go through it or somebody else does. So I guess Penn State has disappointed me a little bit. And then I think Michigan State is interesting because Nebraska plays them very soon.
Yep.
And that was a nice win for them to get over Boston College, which is that's a grinding, tough team under Bill O'Brien. We know that from the bowl game. And so that one went to 2 OTs, but Aiden Childs and the guys pulled it out 42-40. I think that's a nice win for them early on because that was definitely a toss-up game before the season.
Yeah, no, that was a game where it looked like they weren't going to win, and then was able to kind of put things together in the overtime to get the win there. The other team that sort of stood out to me a little bit, and I mentioned them earlier, they had Purdue in one of the early Big Ten games. USC has put it on people. Jaden Maeva, I don't think we should discount the fact that he's in his second year working with Lincoln Riley now. That is obviously one of the most quarterback friendly offenses in the country. And he's put up some pretty good numbers early on. Now, they played Missouri State and Georgia Southern. And a Georgia Southern team that doesn't have, Marquise Watson Trent. So they're probably just working through it really hard there on their second level. But, and even if they go beat up Purdue, again, it's not like they've taken this huge step, but USC is kind of one of those teams. I don't know what to make of them, and I'm not sure we are going to know until we get much deeper into the season.
Yeah. Maybe we learn a little bit more this week. I don't want to completely just knock Purdue, which has had a nice 2-0 start and done what they're supposed to under Barry Odom, who I actually think was a really good hire for them in
good coach.
in the moment they're at right now. And so That'll be a game where, you know, they'll have the train ready to roll in West Lafayette and kind of fired up for a nice TV spot. Gary Danielson's on the call. That's his alma mater. Who knows? Maybe there's a little magic in the air. But yeah, so far it's sort of that deal where you're like, man, the scores look good and they could be really good, but I just don't know because of the competition they've played. So we'll keep a track on USC over the next few weeks. That goes for everybody, though. I titled the last ranking set, Huskers move up a spot while we're in the waiting room. And that's exactly it. It feels like we're in the doctor's office, like we're trying to find a magazine article to get us through the next half hour or so before we actually get into the checkup area.
Yeah, if we're lucky, it's only a half hour and we're not waiting
Yeah.
for a whole hour for a 5-minute appointment. But that's a different conversation for a different day. All right, that's been Husker 24/7 Daily. We get you your Nebraska news and Big Ten Conference conversations at 10 a.m. every morning during the week. Be sure to check out everything we have going on at Husker 24/7. The Hypecast is up, so be sure to check that out as well. Get yourself prepared and hyped for the big game against Houston Christian on Saturday.